Good morning. Am I recording? Yes. Hello, everybody. This is Chris Jones. I'm with the University of Arizona, Gila County Cooperative Extension, and you're with us today for the Garden and Country Extension webinar. Today, we've got Charles Beck with us. He's going to be talking about the Space Mission Earth program, book that he wrote a few years ago, and we will share what that's all about with us. A few things about these webinars. They're a weekly Zoom webinar, 60 minutes or less, Thursdays at 11 a.m. in Arizona. We feature a variety of horticulture and natural resource topics relevant to the environmental conditions and residential concerns of Gila County. If you live outside of Gila County, you're very welcome to be here as long as the topic is of concern to you. And this is being recorded. It will be posted at the University of Arizona's Cooperative Extension YouTube channel. So I've got that there. I share that information at my website, and anytime you need to go back and look at those, please do. And the University of Arizona is an equal opportunity affirmative action institution. A little bit about our agenda here. Thank you for everybody who's able to join with us early, our login time. Again, my name is Chris Jones. I'm the moderator. Our topic today is the Space Mission Earth program, Charles Beck. When Charles finishes his presentation, we will have a question and answer discussion. Please feel free to put those into the Q&A box or the chat box, and I'll help moderate that and feed those questions to Charles. And before we're done, I'll be sharing the evaluation link. Matter of fact, it's in the chat box right now. If you just want to set that to the side, please share that evaluation information with me. It really helps with the programming. And then we'll try to finish up by noon here. Here is our presenter. This is Charles M. Beck, author of Space Mission Earth. He is a community environmental planner. And at this time, we are ready to hand it over to you, Charles. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. My name is Charles Beck. This is the book that I wrote, Space Mission Earth, available on Amazon. I'm speaking to you from Earth Central, the Earth Operations Center at the Globe Station. Do I minimize this here? Okay. Here we go. The first picture here was the Space Mission Earth logo.
Charles?
Yes?
I'm afraid the screen didn't come up. We'll need to go back to the share screen, that green button, select the window, and then hit share again.
All righty.
Yay.
Here now?
We're good. Okay.
Okay. There we go. So here we start again. Here's the logo for the Space Mission Earth program. The prime directive of the program is Equitable Social Environmental Stewardship of Planet Earth. And I do put the word preface equitable in front of social environmental stewardship because we need to define stewardship sometimes of who's doing the stewardship. And with the principle of equitable there, then we have it more refined. The program intent and the synthesis method of inquiry are to communicate with and engage all the planet for an equitable social environmental stewardship using a realistic, pragmatic synthesis viewpoint, incorporating the 6 directions of north, south, east, west, up, and down for one planet, one ecosystem, one civilizations, and the many neighborhoods that are there. We begin this approach for the reader and the developer by incorporating the human trait of imagination, the imagination that is free of fantasy and fabrication and directed through the heart and focused through the mind. With this, we focus on the intent, apply the principles within the program, and fill in the gaps. We begin the journey. The journey started in this graphic here in the lower right-hand corner when humanity, or a lot of people are talking about social conditions, what a mess, what are we going to do? And they just decided, well, we're just it's a mess, let's just get out of here. So they get on their little spaceships and they start traveling, and they just can't go fast enough. And then around the halfway point where they have to decide if they can go back or keep on going, they start questioning why they are leaving. Why are we headed away? We're humans, we can solve anything. We can solve our problems. So they decide to reverse the course. And with this, the heart of it all, humanity's true mechanisms are activated. No question, they figure out that equitable planet stewardship is humanity's baseline for survival and transformation. Then they decide we're on a mission. Yes, space mission Earth. And let's first do a planet protection plan, and then we will build eco-civilization 1.0. We will start with eco-regions. Here are the official space program logo and the space mission patch. What I'm involved in is trying to find out synthesis, how you put things together, not how you divide things. So the synthesis is a concept of principles and design approach, which I've used or I've worked with or tried to work with as a planner. And I feel that the language that I've come up with is applicable for real projects. The development of common language for communication and manifesting. We're talking about a plan, we're talking about all the different scales, all the different kinds of people, all the different cultures, and how do you find this language to communicate with them? We start out with having principles. Principles are not a belief system or an ideology. A principle is a whole and distinct and communicates meaning. If something is called a principle and is contradictory or based on a possibility, there is no meaning and is not a principle. The 10 synthesis principles that are in this program are fundamental principles for the foundation stones for building of any Earth mission project. The application of these principles to each project will ensure that the project meets the overall program mission goal of establishing a planet equitable social and environmental stewardship. So what is principle, or what is synthesis? That's the first principle. Synthesis is a consciousness that is a unification or a fusion or process of creating. The symbol you see up here is a principle of synthesis illustrates this. For example, view the synthesis symbol as a geometric language involving 3 representations. The first being a red colored sphere representing something. That something could be an idea, an object, concept, principle itself, a device, understanding, etc. The second blue sphere could be the opposite of what is determined to be represented by the red sphere, or it could be something else. The third symbolic sphere is purple. That's the purple represents what happens when you mix the colors red and blue. You make a color purple. In other words, purple is a synthesis or blending of 2 ingredients. This blending can be a synthesis of opposite points, concepts, or it can be blending of other ingredients to create something new. A synthesis can be created by asking the question, what if? What if I put the red and blue together? What do I get? What is the synthesis for that? So this is a basic principle for developing programs. Here are the 10 synthesis guiding principles that I came up with. And then I developed symbols with it because I wanted to figure out how to do international language. The symbols, social ecology, stewardship, that's kind of like the umbrella. There's a concept that I've come up with called MISTY, which is recognizing that the physics of matter, energy, space, time, and information are actually resources. And we look at them at that level, we look at them at the laws of conservation and renewability. The third one is connectivity. Everything is connected. You get into the philosophies of the ancients, they speak of how things are connected, not how things are separated. Interchangeability, that's the same thing, developing concepts and being able to interchange them into other places and other times. A multi-scale transboundaries, that's a principle of governance, environmental governance, where you have ecosystems or projects that cross political boundaries. Open access to knowledge, the right to know. That's what humans, that's how we can evolve. And that's how we can take our civilization to the next level, is through open access to knowledge, open source platforms, access through things like the libraries was a good example. Reciprocity, that's also an ancient principle in anthropology. Global asset building, sustainable projects. When you develop a sustainable project anywhere on the planet, you're developing an asset for that planet. That's their global assets. Transparency, that's to me is transparent. And then the principle of synthesis itself. What I've tried to do is develop, as a planner, I tried to develop a pattern language to be able to communicate with many people, and also to develop projects. Pattern language was a concept developed by an architect in the 70s. I think some of you might be familiar with him for planning communities using basic concepts and interchanging them. So I've just built off of that. This developing synthesis pattern language is a socio-environmental placemaking pattern language for ecology, society, infrastructure, policies, and practices in built environment. Here's a couple of tools here. This is probably like the first, when I started thinking about synthesis, some picture that I drew when I was on my break at work, seeing how all the different scales work together with the elements. And around 2005, I developed these particular matrices. The idea is to pull things that are already exist off the shelf, out of the file cabinet in relation to the different categories within the elements or within the matrices itself. I'll show that a little bit sooner or further on. Many patterns form a pattern language. The mix of the ecoregion elements form patterns within a project site footprints. Here's just a simple graphic showing when you're looking at a site, what do you see? You see the processes, you see flows, you see how things are connected and coupled, the different shapes that you're going to come up with, the different spaces that you're going to work with. Here's one of the matrices here, designing with the 5 elements. I chose in this particular case the 4 elements, and I added the 5th element of the life force to be able also to communicate with people in different consciousness and different cultures. So for example, the life force, what will we pull off the shelf for developing in the conceptual planning? We talk about wellness. At the site level, we would develop walkable spaces. And architectural features, we would develop view sheds for as you're walking around, and materials and non-toxic, and devices like pedestrian park, or active or passive devices like pedestrian parks. And each one of these, this isn't like the list, this is part of the list. And each one of these is a separate file that you would pull out and find out and see how that would work within your project. Here's an example of the other matrix. I'm bringing it in, the pattern language, the pull down menu showing how for urban design and housing, for planning, what I would pull out of there, for the site context, for the architecture, for the materials, what are the specs and standards, what are the best practices, what are the performance standards and measures, what are the social ecological development indicators, designs, and plans that you're developing a project. Here we start with a site, a project site. Some of you may even be familiar with this particular area. As we're up there in Earth Central on the bridge, we have this portal that we're working with. Here's the project portal, pulling things together. The practitioner is using these to, we start on the left-hand side, we have the watershed. What are the requirements? What are the restrictions and for the watershed itself? The design matrix, you have a site plan over here. And this is when they're working with developing the project site. So what do we do with all this knowledge that we're getting? The idea is if you develop a project in a particular ecosystem, you have created a template. You can take that template to a similar ecosystem, another place on the planet, and use that and with local adaptations. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we have to have access to that knowledge that's already been created. If we have access to that knowledge, instead of recreating it every time, we can ratchet the planet up on a knowledge sharing level and just move things faster and faster, especially in the time we're now for sustainability and climate change adaptation. So my idea here is to create a world knowledge center. What was I inspired by to do this? I was inspired by the Library of Alexandria in the ancient times. I was inspired by the Carnegie Library. I was inspired by something called the Whole Earth Catalog that came out in the 70s. Some of you may be aware of that one. So with this, we create this open access to knowledge management for project knowledge management. One of the One of the deliverables for this is to create a catalog of sustainable infrastructure projects and services that's uh, that's open for development as it goes along and access, so it grows as things happen. The preliminary mission concept design. Now we're going to get into the space program itself, how it's designed. The mission statement is to establish Planet Earth ecoregion placemaking system for equitable social environmental stewardship. With that mission statement, what are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are planet Earth's humanity and environment for equitable stewardship. The planet's environment, the landscape, its citizens, private and public organizational sectors of the planet, the ecosystem, the region, the local, and the site. Those are what I call the pearl scales of the planet. All this is based on open access to knowledge. Some of the concept of operations, when you're doing a space program, you develop your concept of operations, how you run the mission itself. The attributes to this are integrated into the operations. And the top of it, we talk about multi-sector and multi-discipline groups. The idea is, how do we bring these together? How do we communicate? How do we do our projects and in real life? In this program here, there is no physical space, no physical office. It's a virtual reality. It's a virtual space. We apply the synthesis principles within the concept of operations, the pattern languages. We develop the ability to do micro model simulations through all of our information that we gather. And we also create a knowledge economy network within the virtual organizational structure and the cloud knowledge bank network. If I was at NASA and I had an idea for a mission, I would develop a chart like this called a quad program, or a quad chart. It's 4 different sectors. I've talked about the stakeholders and some of the objectives. Here's on the right-hand side is an outline for the communications infrastructure. On the bottom are some of the deliverables for the project. Like they have to adopt a ecoregion program, develop ecoregion development pattern books. When you think about the program, bottom line, just think about Star Trek. That's how I got my ideas when I was in the Navy and we were on the aircraft carrier. We're sitting around going, oh, this is just like Star Trek. So that's kind of how I built that. For many, many years, I thought about that thing. How would I do that? And that's why we have the bridge here that's under development, the modeling for it, and Earth Central. Earth Central is a missions operations center. The Earth Central has the bridge, and the bridge is in virtual reality, and it's the operations management. So what is the technology for this? The technology is going to be how we integrate the human and technology in a comfortable form where we're not controlled by the technology, but we're using the technology. That's how tools were developed. Like, I get back into my anthropology, what cultures would keep the same tools for hundreds, if not thousands of years until something happened in their ecology and then they change the tool. The same thing's happening with us. Our ecology is changing, our consciousness is changing, our world is changing so drastically. What is the technology that we can develop for to sustain ourselves and our planet? So the development of the missions stations terminals are kind of laid out here, are the concepts here. You can see the different technologies. So like I say again, think of these portals here on the satellite or on the space station floating in the Earth in the virtual reality, and the practitioners are monitoring the planet for the regional stations, the field stations, and the projects and within the various ecoregions. Here, Wonder Woman came by as the bridge was being developed to do some beta testing. You can see some of the windows here that I pointed out earlier that were on the space station, and she gave her feedback on what she thought and how it would work. At the same time that the bridge was being developed, down the hallway, some people got together and just started discussing, well, what about the planet protection plan? Now, if I was at a NASA and I had a project, I have to actually write a planet protection plan to protect whatever I do, what are my impacts, not only to where I'm going, but when I come back, am I going to contaminate either end of the mission? So my question is, why don't we have a planet protection plan for planet Earth? So here's some people got together and the carpet happened to be green, so they decided to call them the Green Circle Group. And they're talking about some of the basic elements involved in a planet protection plan. And Wonder Woman was also there, and she gave her input on what an equitable stewardship is for humanity's transformative baseline. And the social contract was discussed for that at that same time too. The social contract is a concept from period of enlightenment of philosophers, but a lot of the social contract was what the government had with the people, but the people also have a social contract with the government. Who are the people who practice this? Well, we could call them equinauts. Space Mission Earth issued a personnel department dispatch calling for all equinauts. What is an equinaut? Equinaut is someone who journeys within a consciousness of ecosystem connectivity, or the balancing of nature and humanity, practicing equitable planetary stewardship through living, design, exploration, and scientific work, an individual or member of a group of planetary heart workers. Here's one of our equinauts on their mission or on their tasks. Piglet was sent to Alliance, Nevada to look at the 2017 solar eclipse totality and give his report. And you can see the data that he collected. And at the bottom, the Equinaut task completion comments. Equinaut says, "I can't believe I was there and I saw this such cosmic motion in action." Now we get down to the Planet Earth Ecoregion Placemaking Mission. In planning, that's a common term, placemaking. They use it all the time. That's what you're doing is when you're developing something, you're making a place. When a mission project is developed under ecoregion principles, practices, and specifications, it can be duplicated in similar ecoregions with local variations throughout the planet. This process eliminates reinventing information and knowledge every time a project is developed. This is one of our problems, how, to me, it's a problem, of how it keeps us from at a certain level at the least common denominator. We have to reinvent the information and the knowledge over and over again. Why can't we find a better way of moving this forward faster? If you were in projects like the Manhattan Project, you can pretty much be sure they didn't end up reinventing the wheel over and over again because they had a mission and they had a time limit when they had to complete that mission. And the same thing with Apollo. Well, with the Apollo program, they did a lot of experimentation, which the industry nowadays is getting the fruits of. Mission application scenario, one of the scenarios for ecoregion placemaking that I thought of when I was developing this is, if I'm in the Amazon jungle, what is required to develop the infrastructure for a regional medical center? How do I access and communicate the information and knowledge to do this real time? So if I'm in the jungle and I'm going to build a medical center, I call up my little whatever device I have to Earth Central or to the space program, the bridge, and tell them what my footprint is and say, how much solar energy do I need to run this project? And they should be able, because the knowledge is there, somebody's already calculated that concept out before, to quickly give me that information. The placemaking mission statement is to establish a planned ecoregion-based placemaking system for equitable social environmental stewardship. This is pretty much what I was just talking about earlier. One of my interests is infrastructure. When I was a planner in cities and counties, obviously I got some contact with public works and with infrastructure, but when I ended up working for the Department of Transportation, it really opened my eyes and my awareness of the connectivity of infrastructure and the elements that are involved. And it was really fascinating. And so I've developed some kind of rapport with infrastructure. To me, infrastructure is everywhere. It's just how you want to look at it. And what's the connectivity? You see the little lights down there. There's your infrastructure connectivity from space. And on the chart on the right-hand side were just some of the elements that I put in a chart form to think about when you're developing infrastructure projects. One of the premises for this program is that every site is a habitat at one scale or another. This is a real life case here. My friend Eric Herman and I went down to this project early in the morning when it was raining, and little picture here, you can see where it's a small mammal reptile center. We saw that, and we saw footprints of 5 different animals that walked through there during the rain. Now, this is a project for a bridge project that crosses the Verde River on I-17 in Arizona, and that was the project that I was looking for. But at that time, I noticed, oh, at the same time, we have our infrastructure and the animals have their infrastructure. So we kind of started calling it eco-infrastructure. As the cars are going across, on the top of the picture, underneath that is the eco-infrastructure moving around in their world also. So here's again, infrastructure and eco-infrastructure. Here's the question of balance concerning stewardship. Which structure is more important? Is it a black and white issue, human versus nature? Again, we're looking at the transect of the let's say that's I-17 transect from the different densities of population on top of a watershed. And underneath that bridge there, you can see the animal or you can see the bird nest. What's the balance? What's the question of balance? Well, we're also involved in social systems, social ecology. A social system is also be thought of as building by interconnecting modular components or building blocks within that whole system. For an equitable planet stewardship, we have to have access to knowledge, open access to knowledge. None of this fake news, fake this. We have to have access to open access to knowledge and being able to apply that knowledge. And one of the ingredients for that is the energy, the principle of energy, renewable energy development systems, environmental resource stewardship, understanding the rural-urban infrastructure modernization, the interfaces between the urban and the rural, good investment, education, economic diversification, and universal health care. We need to have everybody have access to health to be a healthy planet. There are many projects that are outlined in the book, and the purpose of them is to contribute to the world knowledge base. Here's some of them quickly. There's no certification for this program, but there's areas that you can study to help you develop your projects. Systems of systems, I have a small little module for that, a module for understanding of pattern language, and something called a learning landscape, which is similar to ecoregion placemaking. Some of the deliverables for that are the space or the adopt an ecoregion and a space. I'm sorry, this time machine question. I'll show this in a second. So the project Adopt an Ecoregion, the social ecology of a place, is to develop an understanding of how to help in creating sustainable placemaking throughout the world. So what you do is you study an area that you want to be in, or your home, your neighborhood, your state, and whatever ecoregion that is, and you learn about it. You learn about the social and the ecology parts of it, and then you go to another place in the planet that has the same ecoregion and see what their cultures are like and what their issues are and what their problems are and what their built infrastructure is. One of my favorite ones is the time machine question. There is a scene at the end of the 1962 movie version of H.G. Wells' book, The Time Machine, where it's determined by the time traveler's friend that when the time traveler went back to the future, he took 3 books with him. The question he posed, if you were going to rebuild any civilization, what 3 books would you take with you? And this is the question I've had since I saw this movie many, many years ago. Haven't quite come up with those 3 books yet. But in this case, let's format the question for a little differently. To develop an open access world knowledge center, from your perspective or speciality, what 3 books, papers, plans, or blueprints would you add to the World Knowledge Center Library for a sustainable civilization based on equitable social environmental stewardship of a planet? And here's the 3 questions here to fill in as you wish. Here's another picture of the bridge when it was under construction. So where's the program now? You see the little blue star. I've developed the concept studies. I wrote the book. The book is almost like outline form. It's almost more questions than answers. And so I had a free license on how I could write it. As I get into the formulation stage, it has to be more technical, more precise, and more process oriented. So we're at that point here. Status is to develop a proof of concept, engage like-minded planetary heart workers for collaborative demonstration projects, develop an eco-region placemaking interchangeability model, the eco-region placemaking books, and adopt the eco-region placemaking projects. So in summary, the Space Mission Earth program is to uphold equitable stewardship consciousness of one planet, one ecosystem, one civilization, and many neighborhoods. And so this is set up so you can't accuse the program of being a global whatever, a global this, because I get all the way down to the neighborhoods and local sites. So you choose which scale you work in, you wish to work in. Every site is a habitat is another premise. Program multi-scales of operation are the planet, the ecosystem, the region, the local, and the site, the Pearl scales of the planet. This program is inclusive participation of all planet disciplines, all planet organizational sectors, from the individual, the private, the public, for a collaborative system, a system of systems collaboration. The knowledge already exists. What is needed is the full speed organizational structure to take the planet to the next level. Development of a common ground, equitable stewardship through design pattern language. A virtual reality of operations, offices, and knowledge. Interchangeability of off-the-shelf design components. Contribute to open access to world knowledge base. And some of the measurables I took out of the book are to increase the planet sustainable infrastructure assets, the social environmental habitats, healthcare, education, and training facilities, ecoregion social environmental resources, assets, and status monitoring, and to statistically increase sustainable global assets. The ultimate synthesis question is, what if? So here's the crew leaving the port for Space Mission Earth, full speed ahead as they go to their mission to develop an equitable social environmental planet Earth. Thank you. I want to thank Chris for opening up this venue, and I want to thank everybody who took their time and their energy to listen to my comments. I can be contacted at synthesis, all lowercase, case, words, letters, synthesis, III at gmail.com. I have a Facebook, synthesis3. I guess that's it.
Thank you very much, Charles. That was very interesting. I'm going to bring up my camera. If you could bring your camera back up. And we'll open this up for questions. If you want, you can even hit that raise a hand and I can put you up for to talk or put in something in the chat. But if you, and Charles, if you can, just keep looking for your video, if you can get your camera back on.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Some of the things that I was looking at as we were going along is you were looking first the concept of synthesis, where you start with your red and your blue button, or bringing them together. It could be something, it could be the opposite, it could be something else, but something in the opposite. I think of a dualism, right? You have a range of things that somebody's like complete extrovert to introvert, and you
Yeah,
that would be a synthesis.
It's a dialectical viewpoint. It's a view. Yeah, it's a dualism. It could be a yin yang is a dualism. You don't say yin yang, you say yin yang. That's the synthesis right there. It's dialectical. I learned about this when I was in high school and I studied communist theory and dialectical systems and philosophy and stuff, and that's how synthesis came out. I actually just when I was in the Navy and I was doing weather charts, I'd have a red pencil and a blue pencil and a purple pencil when I was coloring in the fronts. I would have a red warm front and for blue or red, and then a cold front for blue, and then there would be something called an occlusion, and that would be purple. And that's the same concept. You look at that, that's 3 points. So that's how I actually discovered the colors behind the synthesis. And the concept is it's dialectical, but there's a lot you can do with a dialectical viewpoint because it's an evolutionary thing. Once you read a synthesis, you can go on and create another synthesis.
It keeps on moving. So one comment here from Eric Herman. He says hi, and he put Desert Solitaire in one of his books for going forward. So he said great job and he's enjoying it. So I think you might know Eric.
Oh yeah, he's a wildlife biologist. He's out there right now in the field, and yeah, I get a lot of good feedback from him.
Okay, so Victoria asks, any projects for the Globe Miami area? And I was thinking about the same thing. You've been living in this community for a while too. We'd look at some of these components that you've been hitting at. I'm thinking, and again, it's taking a lot of these concepts and then applying them. You had questions on how to apply. So Victoria, any projects for Globe Miami area that you might think of in this concept, in this, concept?
Sure. Yeah, and you've heard, I've tagged on to you too because you're into the riparian areas. I'm in the riparian areas. To me, those are indicators, not only through our culture because they're so important to us visually, but through our wildlife. So I think wildlife corridor monitoring and enhancement is a really important thing right now. I think you can develop projects to do that. One of my ideas was to use little inexpensive monitoring devices that you can build through maker shed projects for monitoring pH and temperatures and moisture within those areas. And you could locally get people together to create those and take them out there, almost like a citizen scientist type of program. And then another one of my concerns has always been about solar energy offset at a local level. My feeling about for the Globe community is that the city should have offset for some of the energy that they use, let's say for recreational areas. At nighttime, we see all these huge lights that are on. Those are really nice, but who's paying for all that? Why can't we develop the energy here at the local level for running those lights at nighttime? So that would be some kind of solar offset project to also do an assessment of how we could get solar production within the community itself. So those are 2 areas there. And then there's heat mitigation projects. How can you develop something for the heat areas that are there? And I think people in this community are working on some of those.
That's cool. We got plenty of solar and it's a good opportunity for our energy.
Well, I think for solar could be used for around the mines and nothing else. Look at all these terraces. When I first moved to this town like 20 something years ago, I saw all these terraces. And the first thing I saw was solar energy on those terraces. Now, could that happen? Yes. Why can't the mines start producing energy? And if they make money on it, whatever. But the idea is we got to lower the carbon footprint. It's just that simple. That's probably the number one thing that you talked about in your class. And it can be, it doesn't have to be a centralized, huge, gigantic thing. It's decentralized by putting solar on your house if you can afford that. But we got to get the tax breaks out for that. But solar's not going to go away. It's just not going to go away. I've watched it for decades and decades go up and down, up and down. It's not going to go away.
It's coming on, and I understand the storage is improving, and yeah, I understand. I expect us to have quite a bit of solar. You did mention just an excellent place that we could be using solar, so appreciate you sharing that. Robert Howard makes another comment. If you know Robert, he says, "Hi Charles, the discussion is going very well. I am so grateful for the knowledge you share for our Earth. I am here to help with any projects you have or develop." So your friend Robert. And
I just
Victoria
want to
asked, do you have products for stamps and decals? I got this great little cup from you.
Oh, great. Yeah. So you have like one of the first ones I made. It's the Earth Central official caffeine infusion device.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so that's for the Earth mission. You know, like I use Globe Station, but like wherever you are, you set up that station, you become that practitioner within that particular station. Um, so that's kind of the way that works. And I do have some stamps that were created, space mission Earth stamps on them.
Great. Okay, so I
Little
guess
things like
people
that.
can reach
And then
out to you.
you could develop
Okay.
patches from it. The logos that I have, they're pretty good for, you know, when I designed the logos, I had somebody, I told them what I wanted, and I wanted to be like a real space program. And the two that I showed you there, the people who they gave me 5 iterations of it, and the first 2 just knocked me over because they saw exactly what I was looking at. Because I could wear one of those patches and feel like I am in a real space program. And that's the intent is. I talk about it, I joke about it, but I'm really serious about it because I spent literally 50 years thinking about how would I organize something at, at the level to create what I wanted to solve, the vision that I saw over 50 years ago. And I studied organizational structures. I studied the Manhattan Project. I studied the Apollo program. And the Apollo program, well, the Manhattan Project was obviously very serious, very successful, but you know, it was a compartmentalized program. The Apollo program was a successful program. The management structure that they finally developed for that worked. And I think it still could work today as we look, instead of looking outward, we're looking forward. Now, the reason I developed Space Mission Earth is that I originally had the Earth Central as you see it. That's what I came up with. But I really kind of got peeved about the Mars program. And you're talking to a person who has over 200 books on space travel in my own personal library. And it was plugged into the Mars program since like 1950, whatever. And so I have all that information, I have all the knowledge, but the reality was they were saying they were going to save humanity by going to Mars. And I'm going, wait a minute, you're just going to take the problems to humanity and you're not going to help humanity to the way I look at it. Scientifically, I would go to Europa if I really want to learn a lot about science and space. So that's why I set up the space program, the Earth Space Mission Earth, and saying instead of going that way, let's go this way. Let's go where we're at, and we'll set it up as a program for space. And this, I'm starting to call this the most inclusive program on the planet because anybody can be involved in Space Mission Earth. And that's what's exciting about it to me. At whatever level you want to do it, you can take it as seriously as you want, as long as you just keep on pumping out sustainable projects that help the planet.
All right. Just one more comment here from Robert. He wants to purchase one of these cups.
Well, come on by and I'll give you one. I got a few left.
Okay, well, there you go, Robert. And so as we were talking, I was looking at the value system that you're placing on this. And, a couple of the words you're using are equitability. We want to have it equitable amongst people and the planet. So your environmental protection was very important because if we don't take care of the environment, we're not going to have the resources we need, as a society. You talked about the social contract and a little bit about the economy. At one point you had a graphic where you had like a knowledge economy. And just wanted to see if that's your idea of, because you've got to have those 3 things in place for society, for sustainability. And so what are your comments on ideas on the economy that you think would work?
Well, in the book, I kind of do a small paragraph on it, and there's some principles about what I think the kind of the new world economy, since it's the new world we're going to, is that uh, the people who produce the product should have a share in the profits of the product. And that goes back to my understanding when I was a history major and I studied Abraham Lincoln. That was his principle that he would have implemented if he had lived through the war, and that there's no such thing as a free lunch. That we and that one of the principles I have, like for infrastructure, is pay now or pay more later. That's just a simple concept right there. It is like when you have policy wars in Congress over infrastructure, I don't personally get, because you're still going to have to build the bridge, you're still going to have to build the road, you're still going to have to repair all these. We need a more equitable ecology or economics for something as simple as infrastructure. So I don't want to get into a point where we just go do stuff, because there is, like I said, there's no such thing as free lunch. We got to pay somewhere, we got to pay somehow, and everybody has to share in that. And when I get into the equity part, like I said in the beginning, is social environmental stewardship. I didn't invent that. That comes from the social ecologists themselves. Sure. But as I was right after I wrote almost finished the book, and I started seeing about asking, because I've had this experience when people say, I'm a steward this, I'm a steward that, and what they do and under that term wasn't what I called stewardship. I decided to put the word equitable in front of that. Once I established, you don't want to take a principle and stretch it out too far, because it just gets hard to manage. But by putting equitable in front of that stewardship word, I've created a foundation for something that is this equitable, what you're coming up with, what you're calling stewardship. Who's going to be the steward? Attila the Hun? That's kind of how I was looking at it. Is like Attila the Hun or Pericles of Athens. They were both probably used that word. And so we've seen it in our political environment in the last few years, how that things could be twisted around. For someone who took civics in junior high school and was required to read George Orwell, I've never forgotten that, double speak kind of a thing. So that's important. The words that we use are important, and how we apply them. So, but we still need some kind of mechanism to regulate it, to make sure we're there. That's why we not only just say equitable stewardship, we develop the specifications, the standards, and the best practices for that. And that's what it boils down to. If I'm going to do an infrastructure project under stewardship, what principle or what specs and standards am I using to do that? And they all exist. What's the policy that's keeping me from using this particular specification and standard? As we were talking about earlier, seeding areas that are disturbed. We had an issue where we were told that if an area was disturbed through a transportation project, it had to be so large for you to go back and reseed it. Well, the barren stuff's still there, and the invasive species are going to come in. So why don't we have a complete specification that covers the complete project footprint? Those kind of things. And we have the knowledge. When I did the synthesis, why I started calling it synthesis was that when I started thinking about doing something, I was pretty much detached from the state of the art, because I was down in the trenches pushing thousands of pieces of paper to create projects and stuff like that. You're so far down there, you don't see what's going on in the industry itself. And I started looking around, and I was saying, man, everything we need to solve our problems is already here. The knowledge is here. People have been going for years and years in laboratories and then institutions developing all this knowledge, but we got to pull it together. So that's why I have synthesis. Is you just pulling all this stuff together. The specs and standards exist. Federal Highways has them on their shelf right now. I've seen them 20 years ago, but are they being used? That's the question. Every agency, because if you have different political philosophy coming in and out of office at different times, added to that sustainability, and then it was taken away and added to that. So it exists. Our knowledge exists. You have plenty of knowledge. I have plenty of knowledge. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at it as a practically, to me, this is totally doable. The pattern language thing is totally doable, because I've done it at certain levels. When I was a planner, I used to sneak in little tiny specifications for a subdivision project that the council didn't even realize that I was doing sustainability at that time. So we have the knowledge. Maybe we need to be guerrilla planners or whatever, but it's doable. It's just having, taking the first step, I guess, is the deal.
Okay. Well, thank you, Charles. Victoria's adding just a little bit of information here about possibly working with our Cobra Valley Watershed Partnership for the riparian corridor projects. We've been looking at that and need to continue that work, help to protect those corridors. And I don't know if we have any wildlife cameras or something like that, because you're talking about monitoring, you talk about the wildlife, and that would just seem like a really good opportunity to see who's moving through there. But got a few people here still with us. If you have any more questions, please raise your hand or add it to the chat or Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and put that survey button up again. Come on. There we go. And if you're able to go into that link there and provide me the survey, I really appreciate that. Charles, we don't hear from people. Here we got something in the Q&A. Eric's offering to bring some cameras. And Victoria says, show the book again.
You see the book here? And it's 8.5 by 11. Each page to me, when I wrote, the idea was to keep concepts under 1,000 words. And I actually tried to keep things on one page, 1 or 2 pages. So even though they're very graphic, my point was each picture is 1,000 words. I could have written hundreds of thousands of words as I was taught in social sciences majors. They just keep on saying, keep writing. Well, I wanted to pull it together because I didn't want to get everybody lost. But the book is 8.5 by 11, and I actually make 0 cents on this. This is the least amount of money I can sell it for through Amazon. I want to figure out how to release it at open source. I just haven't figured out how to do that because I'm going to do it so somebody can't alter the book itself. So if anybody's got an idea how I can do that, I would appreciate that. And when that's available, I will be able to send that worldwide without any cost. I did the book because some people like to have books to look at and stuff. And there are a lot of pretty pictures in there. So, and the idea is to meditate on the different pages and things.
Well, it has got a dense amount of information in it. You repeat it in ways that we take the time to read the book. I did read it, got to that last page that you had about the class we did. And I think that this would be a good time to kind of bring this to a close. And want to thank you for your time and hope to see you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and turn off the recording.